Well, it's a long emotional story, but I had worked for the county of Los Angeles for 30 some odd years. Um, in the last years of the county, shortly before I retired, I lost my mother, and it was very unexpected, like most deaths are, obviously, but it was unexpected, and it kind of put me in a really bad way. And I took a leave of absence from the county just because I needed to deal with that. And while I was on leave, I was actually in a very tragic traffic accident. I was broadsided by someone driving about 50 miles an hour, a drunk driver. And I was incapacitated. I had broken ribs, and I was having surgeries, and I was just in bad shape. So I extended my leave and took care of myself, but it was a never-ending kind of battle with the injuries that I had. And as I got better, maybe 6 to 8 months later, I went back to work. And when I went back to work, this is just really emotional, but my younger brother died. He was my rock. And he actually called me to tell me that he had passed out on the way home from walking to work. And I really thought everything was going to be all right, but he called me that night from the hospital and told me that the doctor told him he needed to have a bypass surgery. I flew up there the next day to be with him at the hospital. And he had already had the surgery, and the doctor said he would be fine. And they were going to release him, which I protested, but to no avail. They released him that day. And what happened was that night, I got a call from his landlord who was taking care of him because I had come back home and told me that my brother had died. That was just a terrible feeling. And my other brother had called me, and I told him. And it was just a very bad time. I don't even remember how I felt other than my world had fallen apart. And that night, I actually didn't know what was going to happen to me because I felt like I was having a heart attack. I actually went to call 911. They took me to the hospital. They kept me overnight. It was anxiety. And so, as you can see, it was very hard for me to deal with. And so it was an extremely, extremely emotional time. And I think it was emotional more for me because I had recently lost my mom. I was still recovering from the accident. I was off work on medical leave. I was seeing, I don't know how many doctors. At this time, I started to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I didn't know where my life was going. And this continued and continued, and I was depressed and I was sad. And it was difficult because every morning I woke up, I thought, I want this to go away. I didn't want to feel like this. This is not me. I'm usually a happy person. But I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake it. And maybe within about 6 months after my brother died, I was kind of getting back a little bit, and I went back to work. And within a week after I went back to work, I got a call one day from when I came home that my other brother had died. It was almost like a joke to me. I thought, who would do this to me? I know my brother died. I'm thinking my first brother, and I didn't know what they were talking about. I couldn't believe what they were telling me. And I said, who is this? And he said, this is a friend of Elliot's. Elliot was my brother. And I'm so sorry to tell you, but I tried. He was a doctor. He said, I tried to get here to resuscitate him, but I couldn't, and your brother died. And I don't know. I don't even remember hanging up the phone. I just remember going into the room and just laying on the floor. Whatever I had regained from losing my first brother, I lost again when I lost my second brother. And it was extremely hard. This was now going into the second year, maybe the third year after my mom died. And it all felt like it happened one right after another. It did, even though there were some months in between. Well, I still wasn't healed because I was still having surgery from the accident, from something that happened at work, and life was just not what it was just a few short months and years ago. And I didn't know what to do. I had to now gather all my strength about me because I had lost my younger brother. My son lived up north. There was nobody here to help me but my older brother. So he and I, and sometimes my nieces, would have to go and visit my brother's house to take care of everything. The hardest thing in the world was to go to his house the first day after he died. He was planning a party. It was around Christmas time. I didn't know who he had invited, but I knew it was a big crowd. And I had to be there to greet them, to tell them what happened. I think for me, that was the hardest thing I ever had to do. And I've had some hard things to do, but that was the hardest thing. And every day was a difficult journey after that. My life was unbelievably disjointed. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if I wanted to return to work. I felt like my brothers died too young, and I didn't know if I wanted to go back to work. I would obviously be the next person because it was first my youngest brother, then my next youngest brother, and then I would be the next in age. So I was thinking that I would be the next to die. And I think for many months after that, that's the way I lived. I lived as if I was going to die. So I remember thinking, am I ever going to wake up without this feeling of depression and sadness? Because I really didn't want to do that. I really am not that person, but I pushed everybody out of my life. I just wanted to be by myself. I didn't want anybody to make me feel better. I maybe was feeling sorry for myself. I just didn't know what to do. Life without my brothers. I could understand my mom because my mom was 84 years old, but I couldn't understand my brothers. They were just too young. And so I just didn't know what to do with life. If I went back to work, would the stress of the job kill me with all the depression that I was going through? I just had no idea. So one day I woke up. I don't think I thought about it. I just decided I needed to change my environment. I just needed to get away. I was tired of sitting home crying. I was tired of being emotional, being depressed. And as a travel agent, I just decided, let me see what's out there. And I did some research and found that there were several trips, but I wanted the farthest one. I wanted the one that would take me the farthest away from home that I could get to, so I didn't have to think about it. And I picked Tanzania. I did realize when I was on the trip that I didn't think as much about all of the things that had happened. I wasn't depressed. I was actually happy. I was actually ecstatic because I was having an experience that was so unique, so different, that it allowed me to be in the moment and not to be in the past. And I think for me, that was life-changing. I didn't know it at the time, obviously, but when I got back is when it really hit me. So that trip, I would say, that trip to Tanzania saved my life because I was going downhill fast. And I think being there, making that decision to get myself out of that environment was the best decision that I made at the time. I didn't know that. I just knew that I needed to get away. I knew that I needed to be away from my house. My brothers were a huge part of this house when I moved in, and I felt them. I felt their presence here while I was going through that depression. And so getting away for me just took me to a place that I needed to be. It was the present. It wasn't the past. It was the future. I wanted it to be the future. I wanted to come back home and not be in the depressed state that I was before I left. I've never been depressed like that. I've never had my life change like that. But I know now what I didn't think about then. Life does change, but there is life after that type of tragedy in your life. I wasn't convinced of it then, because I think maybe I convinced myself that I was really going to die. But I think that experience in Tanzania gave me the hope that I needed, that life wasn't going to be like that. And I think that was just the thing that I needed. In Tanzania was the thing that catapulted me to the next level. I didn't know what that next level was, but I can say for me, I had tried so much at home. I'd gone to a psychiatrist, to a psychologist. You know, everybody I knew was trying to get me out of the funk. I didn't really want to listen to anybody. I think I needed to be in that place. Maybe it made me feel better. I'm not sure, but then there was another part of me that knew that really wasn't me, that really wasn't the person that I wanted to be. At the moment when I was going through it, it was the place that I needed to be, but after a certain point, it was not, and I really needed to change that. And that's what that trip to Tanzania did. It changed the whole way I thought. It changed my life. It changed everything that I had thought before I left. Going to a psychologist and a psychiatrist was maybe good, because it did allow me to sit in front of them and cry, but it didn't really help me. What helped me was getting out of the environment, being around people who were positive, being around people who were happy. And the funny thing is, they never knew anything was going on with me. They talked to me as if life for them was just one positive after another. And for me, that was so enlightening, because I thought, do they know what I'm going through? But they didn't. I had not told them. I was just like everybody else on that trip. I was sharing, and I was enjoying, and I was laughing. And they would tell me things like, you know, life is about being positive. You know, you can't really think about the negative. You can't think about what happened in the past. You have to make the future, you know, you have to make it bright. And I'm thinking about the things that they said, and I have to think to myself, what do they know about what I went through? But this is the way they are all the time. This is them. This is what I wanted, because I needed to get to that point. And so for me, that trip changed my life in so many ways. You know, when you're in your own environment, there's so many reminders. There's so many things that you think about. Every day, there's always a reminder that you've lost somebody, that those people are not with you anymore. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult if you're already depressed to get to the next level. So putting myself into another environment gave me the opportunity to be the person that I am, the person that I want to be, a new person. Nobody knows anything about what happened, what you experienced, what you're going through, or how you feel inside. Nobody knows that. So it is a chance really to be reborn in a sense, and to move on with your life. Because when you think that life is not worth living, I was living to die. Now I choose, and then I chose to live. And living my life in a way that was so different than how I'd lived it, you know, for those several years before that, was monumental to me. And I just think it's a great way for people who are experiencing this kind of tragedy, or any kind of tragedy that they're going through. It doesn't have to be the drama that I went through, or the tragedies that I went through. But I have to say that because of that, I'm doing something now that has changed my life and gives me purpose and passion. And I don't know that it would have been like that had that not happened. Nobody likes to lose people. Nobody likes to go through the tragedies that I went through. But out of that darkness comes a light that really needs to be shared with everyone. And so for me, now to be able to share what I went through, to be able to share the journey, to be able to share the trip, the experience, to me is all part of the entire safari destination, the journey to take someone, the journey that someone walks because maybe where they walked before was not where they wanted to be or they needed to be. So in so many ways, this has changed my life. The cultural diversity that we see, the villages we visit, I think all of this goes into making Destined to Travel and its safaris one of the best there is out there. This experience has really given me the strength the courage, the motivation to persevere and to move on. I am positive now that if anything happened in my life, I will know how to move forward with my life. And I guarantee you, if you're stuck, if you need to change how you think, how you feel, change your environment. It could change your life. Come on an African safari with me. Tanzania, it is wonderful. I guarantee you it will be the time of your life and you will connect like you've never connected before. You will find yourself in Africa like I found myself in Africa.